Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Ann at Martin House Flowers. I'm indoors today because it is another 90-degree day out there with the humidity probably at about 75, 80%. It's very steaming hot outside. I was outdoors this morning nice and early. I think it was around 7:30. I cut a bunch of flowers that you'll see at the beginning of the video. I managed to fill 3 buckets. Although I don't have any planned bouquets to sell this week, I did decide I needed to cut on the flowers just so that they continue to bloom and grow throughout the season. But in today's video, I wanted to talk about what I learned in growing cut flowers in my garden. So thanks for being here. I garden in 1/3 of an acre in Northern Illinois, Zone 5B, and last year was my first year growing cut flowers. So last year, my husband built me 6 raised beds because I had this great idea that I wanted to grow cut flowers. So we had taken on quite a few projects last year, one being the raised beds, and also we ordered a greenhouse from BC Greenhouse. So my husband had this big job of having to not only build 6 raised beds for my cut flowers, but also build the greenhouse at the same time. So what long story short, I had 2 raised beds ready for me in the month of May, and I had snapdragons and stock that I had ready for those 2 beds. And then subsequently, after he worked on the greenhouse and kind of went back and forth, he also had the 4 remaining beds completed for me by around June or July. So last year, my experience with cut flowers was with quite a few different varieties of not only snapdragons, stock, a bunch of filler flowers, zinnias, of course. I grew bachelor's buttons, let's see, amaranth, salvia, cosmos, a number of different cut flowers, and I consider that to be my test year. Well, in fact, this year, in my second year, I tried even more filler flowers because I felt that I didn't have enough filler flowers for my bouquets. And I had thought that possibly I'd have an opportunity to sell some cut flowers this year. So I have tried to narrow down that assortment for the sake of this video. I really wanted to share with you all what my top 5 cut flowers for this year and including last year's experience, and what I will continue to grow in the next year, year 3. And I might even throw in a couple other examples of cut flowers that I've just started to have experience with. And yeah, I thought maybe you would just enjoy hearing about my top 5 cut flowers. I would have to say that snapdragons, as I previously mentioned, were definitely my last year's favorite cut flower, and this year remain to be that. As I mentioned, last year I grew 1 bed, and this year I decided to do 2 full beds, 2 4x8 beds of snapdragons. And although I grew some different varieties from Gardener Supply, and I believe I had some from Baker Creek, I would have to say that narrowing it down for year 3, what I will continue to grow are snapdragons from Johnny's, and particularly the Potomac series. And I would say that if you were growing cut flowers or snapdragons just for your own personal use, there are definitely snapdragons out there that are a shorter variety. But for cut flowers, if you want long stemmed flowers, I would definitely recommend the Potomac series. So first off, snapdragons are by far, I think, one of the easiest cut flowers to grow. I did grow them indoors under grow lights. Germination was super easy. I would sow maybe 3 or 4 seeds at least in each cell because they are very tiny seeds. But Johnny's has fixed that for us, and they now sell seeds that are pelleted, and those pelleted seeds come in the Potomac series, and so I think that's why I ordered quite a few of those pelleted seeds, and that to me allows you to be just more particular and only sowing maybe two seeds per cell and less thinning out. I won't get into too much detail because I do have other videos that I can link below about growing from seed my snapdragons. You can look under my uh, I think I have a series of growing cut flowers from seeds in my videos this spring. So you can take a look at those videos for details. So snapdragons come in groups of 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and that really is about when in the season they grow. Now I mentioned Potomac series, and basically Potomacs are typically in groups 3 to 4. So they will bloom in warmer months, such as July, late June, July, and they will continue to bloom into, August, September. Um, and in fact, if I chose to succession sow my snapdragons, for example, start them, 8 weeks to the fall, I could probably get some growth, some harvest of snapdragons later on into the fall, and that would be very similar to having spring blooms because they are a cool flower. So although they are a cool flower, you can, which means basically that they can tolerate cool temperatures. I started my snapdragons in late February, and then by late April, they were ready to go into the ground. They can handle a little bit of frost because they're a cool flower. Now, for me in Zone 5B, my last frost date is end of April, about April 20th to the 30th. So they went in around that time, and then they were ready for me to start blooming. I think I had the Monaco orange, and they were actually Monaco orange or a group 3, and they were actually the first to bloom, and that was in middle of June. So it's now the end of July, and they're still going strong. In fact, they're on their second round of blooms because I did continue to cut them from middle of June, and I continue to cut on them so that they continue to bloom. Now, I should say that the very first round of blooms, your stems are thicker, probably a little taller, and the second and third round they're going to be a little bit thinner. So let me just show you. I think that this here, this orange, could very well be Monaco orange, and as I mentioned, they're a thinner stem, um, but they're definitely a tall stem. I picked this one to show you that you can start to pick snapdragons when you start to see the first third of the bloom opening up. This is a little bit early, but whereas this here is a little bit late where you're not seeing those other buds unopened, and you'll see the spent buds below. But I just wanted to show you the different varieties. This is Monaco orange, as I mentioned, and then this is Potomac yellow, and the Potomac series, the yellow in particular, I notice are multi-stemmed. So you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 5 stems of blooms on one main stalk. So that's kind of cool. And sometimes I will just, leave this main stalk and work with that whole bunch together. You can see how long this is. But my favorite of the Potomac in terms of longest lasting, most prolific is the lavender. And unfortunately, the ones I picked here, I've been picking on them weekly, if not daily. The lavender is my favorite. These ones are a little bit spent when I cut them, but this is the lavender. Ideally, again, you're going to have more unopened blooms at the top. So these ones I definitely wouldn't sell, but they can definitely work for my home bouquets. But the yellow is beautiful. I have this sort of peach series, and last year I think I grew Black Prince. Not sure if this is Black Prince. This could be Black Prince, or this could be Potomac Purple. But Black Prince is definitely a shorter variety, and I got them from Baker Creek. They're fine for a small vase like this one here, but for taller vases, definitely you want to go with something like a Potomac series for taller stems. So did I mention snapdragons are cut and come again? So you want to go in to your beds of snapdragons and cut on them, if not daily, at least every second or third day. And if you see blooms that are already spent, where they're all, you see all the little, let me see if I can show you. Here we go. So when you get to this point where you see a little seed pod that has this stamen sticking out, that's already a spent bloom. So if you have a bunch of those, and sometimes you'll see them all the way to the top spent, you want to go into your stems and just cut those as low down as possible so that they'll continue to bring you more blooms throughout the season. So whether you're cutting for production, for selling, or just for yourself, it's a really great idea to go into your snapdragons and cut on them as often as you can. If it's not daily, as I mentioned, every second or third day, twice a week. So that's snapdragons. Second favorite cut flower are zinnias. Now I mentioned that snapdragons are a cool flower, so they're going to be one of your first blooms to grow and be ready in your garden by June into July into the fall. But zinnias are a heat loving cut flower. So by that, what I mean by that is you definitely cannot put them into the ground until the risk of last frost has happened. So for most people, that's for me it's end of April, and a lot of us most people want to wait till even middle of May into Mother's Day. So zinnias, they grow and germinate very quickly. A lot of people will tell you that they like to direct sow their zinnias. I did direct sow some of my zinnias last year because I had some holes in my beds. And what I did find was that zinnias that were direct sowed uh, experience powdery mildew. So I also experimented in growing zinnias under grow lights in different sized cell pots, growing pots. But what I found to be the most successful and the easiest were to use a soil blocker. So I use a 2-inch soil blocker, and I love to use the 10 by 10 bootstrap farmer trays, because then my I think it's 4 or 5 blocks, goes down and fits at least, I think I can do 16 to 20 in a 10 by 10 cells, 16 to 20 soil blocks, depending on how tightly you squeeze them. And I prefer to start my zinnias indoors. So I started quite a few of them under grow lights. And I also, because I do have a greenhouse, and I realize most of us don't have one, but I do have a greenhouse. So I also tried just doing my soil blocks and putting them not under grow lights, but just putting them on my northwest side of the greenhouse. And I found that they actually grew a little faster in the greenhouse than under grow light. So if you have the benefit of, direct light, a sunny spot where you can, if you don't have, grow lights, that's also an option. So, and again, you can also direct sow them, but because you can't control how far apart your seeds are, I think when you're direct sowing, I think that that's what could contribute to powdery mildew. And of course, you could go in and thin them out, but by the time your zinnias and plants are growing, it's really tough to go in and thin them out. So let me just show you some of my favorites of zinnias. This year I tried the ballerina for the first time. This is a ballerina, and the ballerina is from Johnny's. They are so unique. There's so many different types. You've got this sort of spiky um, flower that I know for resale purposes it kind of looks a little bit dry in the bouquet. So some of you may not like it as much, but I kind of like them. But I think for resale, I'm learning that I'm not putting as many of those ones in. Let's see, I have quite a few of these. And then here's, another version of more of a traditional soft rounded petal on the ballerina. So you'll have those different varieties. Let's see. This one here shows you more of the pinks on the tips there. There's a spider on one of these. There's another one with more pink in the petals. Let me get rid of this one spider. Did I show you that one relative to this one? So they definitely on the underside do give you the appearance of being a little more dry, but they're a nice tall stem, sturdy, and definitely they last in the vase at least anywhere from 5 to 10 days, depending on the conditions. If you followed me and watched any of my earlier videos, you'll know that I do sell my cut flowers. I was fortunate enough to become friends with one of our local plant nursery stores. She's a small kind of boutique type shop. It's a husband and wife team, and I was buying a lot of my perennials and annuals from her, mostly perennials and shrubs, hydrangeas, David Austin roses. And she knew I was growing cut flowers. Her name is Barb at the Garden Market Sycamore. And she brought up one day saying, why don't you maybe set up a table or something? And then I think it just started that I just brought over a bouquet in June with my snapdragons and a few fillers like bachelor's buttons. And the very first day my bouquet sold, and I posted it on a video because I was so excited. So since then, for the past, I guess, 4 weeks, I've been bringing anywhere from 1 to 3, sometimes 4 or 5 bouquets, depending. She's gotten a couple orders for me. But now that we're at the end of July, it's definitely slowed down. So I just have one large bouquet there. So anyway, getting back to zinnias, the other favorite, ballerina was new for Johnny's, but you'll often hear about Bennery's Giants, and these are definitely my favorites. Now, this year I had grown too many filler flowers. I wanted to do 2 beds of zinnias, but I ended up doing just 1 bed, but I had so many seedlings that I grew a lot of my extra zinnias in groups of 5 to 7 seedlings that swell blocks, and I grew those between my hydrangeas on my west side. So that's where what I call my hydrangea room. So in between my quick fire fabs, I have little seedlings, groupings of 5 to 7 seedlings, and they are now about 3.5 to 4 feet wide and tall, almost the same size as my quick fire fabs. So here are a couple examples of Bennery's Giants. This is a Bennery's Giant Coral, I believe, Bennery's Giant Purple. Look at the size of them relative to my hand. This is bright pink, a little bit smaller, but they've been in my regular beds. So they are definitely a beautiful cut flower. and because of their size and their saturated colors. But I do really love these pastels, and I haven't done very many arrangements with the bright colors for resale. Last year, if you saw any of my videos, I had a lot of bright colors. I had a lot of corals. I had some, I think, yellows and pinks and purples. So this year I wanted to try the ballerina, and definitely they were the first to bloom. Um, so yeah, those are my favorites. I do have Oklahoma. So I also tried this year for the first time the Oklahoma series, and I wanted to show you what they look like relative to a ballerina, relative to a Bennery's Giant, quite a bit smaller. But what's so special about the Oklahoma series is that they're described on the Johnny's website as not being prone to much powdery mildew. But as I mentioned, I don't get a lot of powdery mildew because I don't direct sow my zinnias any longer. I know there's a YouTuber in Chicago, and she always gets powdery mildew, she says, and that's because she direct sows them. But that's her choice and her raised beds, or she has containers actually. So, oh, I wanted to show you the other favorite of mine, and I didn't seem to grow as many. I didn't buy new seeds, but this is the Queen Lime series, Queenie Lime. And I also have these along my front walkway. I think I've shown them. Maybe I'll show a clip of that. And I did all lime green ones the front walkway, but this is a Queenie Lime, so this is Queenie Lime Red. And if you look on Johnny's or rareseeds.com, you'll see a whole bunch of choices. So relative to size, again, Queenie Limes are similar to a Oklahoma series in size. Here's a probably my largest Bennery's Giant next to a Queenie Lime. So on to my number 3 favorite cut flower, and that's the Cosmo. Now, last year I grew a lot of Cosmos from, let's see, I grew them from, I believe, I did try some from a big box store like Walmart, and I had the sort of those corally, pinky colored ones. But then I discovered a Cupcake. So I just went out about just before this video and cut some fresh Cupcake blush. So Cupcake comes in Cupcake White, Cupcake Blush, and for obvious reasons that it's called Cupcake is because the shape of the petals of the flower resembles a cupcake liner. You see how you have the ridges here? Hopefully you can get close up. And here's a stem I just cut where you can see there's multiple stems on one main stem, multiple branching of florets of cosmos, cupcake cosmos to one main stem. So I would have to say that in my second year, my favorites are still Cupcake Blush, and also, let me show you Afternoon White. Let me see if this is Afternoon White? There we go. So this is Afternoon White. It's a very common cut flower variety in white. It's a nice tall stem. You'll often get multiple stems, multiple blooms on one stem. You see there's another one there below. Sometimes you'll get 2 or 3. And my other favorite, and I've grown them both together, and you'll often see my bouquets with both. afternoon white and fizzy white. So fizzy white, a little bit, lots of extra stems in here. So here's fizzy white. One stem, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 blooms on one stem. So for obvious reasons that it's so prolific, it's a favorite. You can go in and cut just this one stem and let these other ones continue to grow, which I often do. But I cut this one all together, even though these ones weren't ready. Once you see them kind of break through, they might open up in the vase, depending on how bright your area is, where your vase of flowers are. Oh, this one broke off, so that's too bad. But you can see how pointed the petals are. I'm going to take that one off. So often, if one is spent, I just trim that out in the bed and let the others grow, or just, for the sake of my bouquet, I'll just cut out all these other side ones, or use them depending on the bouquet. And I did want to show you this other red color. These red ones are called rubenza. Now, I'd mentioned in a previous video that I wasn't planning to continue with rubenza. I do like the color, that, the fact that you've got something in a kind of reddish raspberry family, but I'm not thrilled with how they are. Number one, they're a little bit shorter, and number two, they get very spent looking very quickly. They get tired and a little bit faded. So if you're growing them just for color, I would say yes, go ahead and do it. But for a cut flower variety and quality of bloom and length of bloom and flowering time in a vase, I would have to say that they are maybe a 6 out of 10. So I'm not likely going to repeat them because I'm always limited for space. So on to my next favorite cut flower, and that would have to be Bachelor's Buttons as my number 4 cut flower. So I literally just threw these all in here and didn't even remove a lot of the foliage, because I just wanted to grab. Oh, there's rubenza. There's rubenza. So rubenza, the height wise, it's pretty good. And I do have multiple stems, at least 3 stems with anywhere from 3 to 5 blooms on one main stem. But again, as you can see here, even though these others aren't ready, the blooms are looking a little bit spent. And for resale purposes, not the best. They pretty much look tired in a vase within the second day. So in terms of ease of growing, Bachelor's Buttons, definitely you hear about how they are one of the easiest cut flowers to grow, and that is because you can grow them indoors. I don't think I did any indoors. As you can see here, I haven't even taken off the foliage, which I should have before putting them in. But I prefer the Blue Boy. This is Blue Boy. It's a gorgeous periwinkle blue, almost the blue of lavender, but they're just such a brilliant blue to add in a bouquet when you're dealing with the soft pastels like pinks and yellows, purples. It's just such a beautiful pop of color. I also did the artistic mix. It has this sort of raspberry color and some striped white, white with raspberry, lavender, and white. But I think next year, I grew them this year because I still had some leftovers, but I would definitely, for me, going forward just stick to the Blue Boy, just because I love the pop of color, and there's just nothing, it's so hard to find a cut flower that gives you that brilliant blue. And I grew these, direct sowed them as well. They were actually a perennial for me. The bed that I had put them in last year actually returned for me in the spring. And all I did was I recognized the little seedlings and I just kind of moved. They tended to kind of grow to the corners of the beds. So I just relocated them sort of in a row, but they kind of just grow willy nilly in the bed. And they're very floriferous, very prolific. You do have to cut on them quite a bit. Here now in the end of July, they've been blooming for about a month. You really have to aggressively go in there and cut back all of the dead blooms. And a little frustration is that when you do cut, you just go in and you cut as deeply as possible. They're not the tallest stems, but you just cut in as deep as possible and you can just cut away all of the spent blooms and then just pick away. You only need little bunches of 3 to 5 in different parts of your bouquet just to give that intense blue color to your bouquet. So love, love, love the bachelor's buttons, or often they're called cornflower. So let's see, that number 1 was snapdragons, number 2 was zinnias, number 3 was cosmos, number 4 were bachelor's buttons, number 5 I would have to say are yarrow. So this is yarrow. I think this is either Colorado mix or there's a few other pastel varieties. As long as for me, I grow some pastel varieties, I'm going to be happy, because I like how they complement the lavender Potomac snapdragons, the pink zinnias. They're just a really pretty pastel-y pink, and they've come such a long way from growing yarrow, the perennial that we're all familiar with, who, for those of us who've been growing for 20 to 40 years like I have, where we had that kind of very invasive mustardy yellow yarrow. So those, and I just hated the texture of those. And so I, to be quite honest, was hesitant to grow yarrow until I came across these pastel series. I also have, I have a few different varieties out there, but this pink color is one of my favorites. And what I don't have here, they've already gone to seed, and I think I'm going to be able to collect some seed. What I would call my consolation number 6 favorite would be Bupleurum. And I'll drop in a photo of some of my bouquets with Bupleurum. They are such a really impressive, large, multi-stemmed filler flower. And they have this beautiful foliage that sort of reminds me of eucalyptus. Thank you. My brain reminded me. So the leaves are sort of reminiscent of eucalyptus, but the flowers are this beautiful lime yellow, kind of whimsical flower, and they just fill up the bouquet beautifully. If you have a few stems or one stem with multiple branching of Bupleurum in your bouquet, you're good. I do also have with me, some people do love Status, and that's because if you love to dry flowers, they will look the same as they do right here when they're dried up. And this is Status. I think this is the lavender. They also come in a pastel. I will probably grow this again because it's a really nice pop of that periwinkle or lavender in your bouquet, which is always nice to have. So those are my top 5, 6, I think I've talked about 7 cut flowers. And as I mentioned, if you want more details, in how to grow them, please take a look at my series of growing cut flowers and seed starting, and I will include that in at the end of this video. So please share with me what your favorite cut flowers are. I highly recommend any of these 5 cut flowers to grow just in your landscape or in dedicated raised beds. So thanks for joining me today, and I hope you will like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care now. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.